to study abroad elsewhere. And maybe if you want, you could put that in the chat and we'll know who has study abroad programs. Pepperdine has a study abroad program. I went there as an undergraduate, and the only program they had then was in Heidelberg, Germany. And when we went over, there was no cell phone, there was no internet. We only had, remember those onion skin, blue, thin pieces of paper, and you would write home, and that was your only communication. And nowadays, of course, things have completely changed. The kind of sad part is when you went over in earlier days, you really were thrown into the culture and you were sort of on your own without your cultural support system. The good news now, of course, is that we can do a lot more, particularly with this problem that I was mentioning during the discussion, where at the law school level, there is great concern about missing out or falling behind on your career. So let me share my screen. No, that's the whiteboard. There we go. So Pepperdine has a campus, and I'm assuming you can all see that, and you'll let me know if it's not. Pepperdine is located in beautiful Malibu, California. And as a law student, why would you want to spend 3 years in the sun and surf and beach? And wouldn't you far better want to spend at least a semester in London, England, where we have a campus right on Exhibition Road, across from Imperial College, up from South Kensington, Knightsbridge, Hyde Park, Royal Albert Hall, and so on. It's a hugely popular program. It's a semester-length program, and it's also, we've had a summer program there as well. But, and in fact, we've had Susan, students from Thomas Jefferson and from many other law schools as well. We take visiting law students from ABA accredited law schools. We also have a summer cooperation with the University of Augsburg, so students can study in Germany, also in English as well as in German. But what I found as the director, I was based in London for most of my law school career, and I'm actually an English barrister, is that I had a lot of pushback from, exactly as some have mentioned, Career Services Office, who have been counseling students that this is going to not look well on their resume, that law firms will think that they're not being serious, that they're not focused on studying real law, and it's just larking about going to pubs in England and traveling throughout Europe. I think that's changing now with the internationalization of law firms, but the stigma is still there. And one of the things that we tried to do was to connect up with the main campus to the best extent that we could. We introduced, for example, video conferencing. Video conferencing was hugely expensive. It meant you had to have a dedicated room. For the most part, we needed someone who was tech savvy that would be able to start it up and prepare it. But the good side of this was that we would have law firms that were coming on campus for OCI, on-campus interviews for jobs, and they would just be brought into another room and they would have a video conferencing with students. That was helpful, but it was not seamless. There were technical issues, and again, expensive, and you lose a room out of your building. Skype was better, but I think that now, thanks, we don't want to thank the pandemic, but as we've said, with the bird learning to fly, is that we are looking at things completely differently now. And I'm hoping that we're moving into a more seamless interaction with the main campus that will quell a lot of the concerns that students, faculty, career development office have with students going overseas. Now, someone mentioned, how do you should lobby the CDO office, but one thing I did is I brought them over to London and had them meet with some of our clinical sponsors, meet with our professors, and actually saw the advantages. We had them working with American law firms, with the US Embassy, fantastic internship opportunities that really enhanced their resume. So I think that changed a lot of minds as well. But I'm seeing a couple of things that might happen thanks to the introduction of Zoom as part of our life. And that is, we've often had students that just need to take a required course. They really want to study overseas, but they need just this one required course that we're not offering. The other side of the coin is we've required our visiting professors that go over to teach and spend a semester in London. It's a terrific opportunity, but that they've usually had to teach 2 required courses just so that we keep students on track, because most of them don't have the luxury of having a semester where they can take all electives. And for the faculty, it's a bit of a hardship. We want them to be there having a kind of a mini sabbatical experience, enriching themselves in the culture, and maybe teaching a class that is a comparative class. But the pressure on teaching required courses means that they don't have the opportunity to do that. So with Zoom, I can see the opportunity where we say the professor teaches 1 required course and an elective, and we have a required that is being offered on the main campus in Malibu that students can take. So the other is we offer European Union in London, fantastic professor at King's College. It would be wonderful to offer that on the main campus in London. So if we can get the timing right, we can see where some of these unique courses that are taught by barristers and solicitors and UK academics could be taught on the main campus. We also have had issues with students being on Law Review Journal, and they're not able to keep up with those requirements. Student clubs, student speakers. I'm the faculty advisor for the International Law Society, and I can see where once our program and our plan is that the London campus will open up this fall, I can see where I'm going to be able to pull in speakers from the London campus, where we're having a speaker there, in with the Malibu campus, and it will really enrich our International Law Society. And then, well, faculty meetings, the faculty that are overseas could still take part in faculty meetings, but perhaps we won't want to mention that. My favorite technology, and this is something that I'm hoping we're going to be able to keep after once we're back in the real classroom, is Zoom has been terrific. How do we create that in the classroom today? Number one, I can see their faces, and it's not just those that sit in the back of the classroom, but when they have their laptops and their heads are completely looking at their screen, and you've got that wall built up with the back of their computer, you can't see their expressions. I'm loving bringing in guest speakers. Usually they have to find their way to Malibu. Of course, this is a nice thing to do as well, but you know, parking and meeting them, and as others said, it's expensive. So beaming in guest speakers that also maybe only speak for 15 minutes, but it's hard to have a guest speaker that comes to your campus that's just speaking for part of the class and leaving. I love the breakout groups. I teach also negotiation and international law and international environmental law and international criminal law, but negotiation was a class I thought, I'm not going to be able to do this on Zoom. But surprisingly, the classes, I think, enhanced, because usually they have to go to different sections of the campus to carry on their negotiation. Now they're in breakout groups, and I can beam into their into their breakout group and actually observe the negotiation as it's taking place. I want to be able to keep that when we're back in the classroom. I also like the fact that I know what they're thinking, well, kind of, because they use chat room actively, and especially, and I teach criminal law, large class, and I can't always look at the chat room at the same time as I'm teaching, but I save it, and afterwards I go through that, and so the comments are funny, they're helping one another, they put in questions, and I see that some of the answers from their fellow students aren't quite on point. So I do a wrap-up Q&A where I go through the chat room and, you know, pick up on points and send that out to them all. I think office hours are enhanced through Zoom. Usually I have students lined up down the hall waiting for their next appointment. There's a bit of privacy that's lost in that. Sometimes a group of students want to meet and the office isn't conducive to that because you have to crowd them into your office. And the fact that the students can just Zoom in for their time and maybe not make a special trip to campus is going to be great. I use iClicker, which used to be a physical device that students had to buy or rent or be loaned out, but now it's an app on their iPhone. No separate clicker is needed. I love that. it takes attendance automatically, and I can look through swiftly of who's attended, who hasn't. I love the instant polling that can take place that I just lay on top of any slide. I want to be able to keep that when we're back in the classroom. And I love the rate my Uber driver feedback that takes place. And it's actually not rating you, but it's phrased as what was your level of understanding? And terrific, at the end of the class, I hit the exit polling and I get back, all fives, level of understanding high, great class, super, super. And then I see a couple fours, maybe a 3, a 2, a fantastic pickup on questions. When you said this, I didn't understand, was that, or could you give examples? So I really depended on that exit polling to understand which class or which segment of a class some did not understand, and I could go over that. And then the high flex classroom of the future. So I know we're talking about synchronous and asynchronous, but I'm looking at what's going to happen in the future with a high flexibility. And don't be too scared when you see this next slide. But what it will mean is that you can be on Zoom and in the classroom at the same time. And we're also looking at if the pandemic means we have to have limited numbers of students per class, we'll have them in what's called duplexing. So they'll be in a second classroom, but they'll switch, like one class you're in the second classroom and the next you're there in person, but it's at the same time and same instant learning. But you'll also be able to have the capability of being on Zoom. So no more snow days. So for those that are in those climates where everything shuts down when the snow hits, for California, that would be earthquake or fire days. But it means that we just say, this is going to be a Zoom day, and everyone, we will keep carrying on class via Zoom. So this is the slide not to be too scared about, but what we're looking at is, if you look at the sending classroom, that is where, if we're there physically, that the professor is there, they have on their desk display 1, display 2. Display 1 will show what's their PowerPoint, and display 2 will be the students in the receiving classroom. There's also this confidence panel, conf is confidence monitor 1 and 2, and that's going to be in front of the professor on the ground. And so rather than having to turn around all the time to see what's on your slide, you can see it right in front of you. And then you have students that are in that classroom. But if you have to separate students, we'll have them in the receiving classroom, but also note the remote students and remote instructor. So if a professor comes down ill with COVID or whatever, they're going to be able to carry on remotely. If the students are not able to come to class, someone's ill or they're taking care of parents or so on, they can come in remotely. Or again, thinking in terms of international education, that we can have some of our students in our program in London or our program in Augsburg that are able to take part in classes, either with the students coming from London to Malibu or from Malibu to London. And sorry, so that is sort of thinking in terms of how this new technology is going to really enhance our international programs, but also thinking in terms of what I would like to see in the classroom when we're back on the ground, to keep this technology that really gives me better insights into the students. It's giving me better feedback, and it's giving me new tools to teach and also to learn what the students are having difficulty with that I can go back and enhance. Thank you.
Thank you. That was really interesting, and I think you raised a lot of really good points. Our next speakers are Amy Ramson and Max Marzetti. I know Amy was in the room. Yeah, you're both here, I think. So I'll turn it over to you.
Hi, I'm going to be starting. May I share the screen?
Yes, you should be able to.
Can you see this, everyone?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Sorry. Okay. So I just wanted to put this up to show you cross-cultural perspectives on privacy law. Sorry, I want to go to the next slide. Okay, I'm not sure how to get to the next slide. Let's see.
You
Okay.
probably have to click your screen.
No, no, no. Say it again. What did I have to do?
Click your screen.
Oh, okay. I clicked everything, so something worked. Anyway, Professor Marzetti and I engaged in COIL, which is a virtual exchange pedagogy, and it's innovative, high impact pedagogy. And basically we did that this semester between his class, which is a master's class in a Paris School of Management, and my class, which is a CUNY, City University of New York, Community College criminal justice class, in which I have incorporated a cybersecurity component. I know that's a lot of words. Anyway, virtual exchange began in the 90s with the advent of the internet, and it basically started with language learning classes, and it was called telecollaboration. But basically what we have been doing is a different type, and it's called collaborative online international learning. And basically it's collaborative. So what it is you have two, could be three professors and from different countries working together, and they collaboratively create a project, and it normally has three activities. That's the classic COIL, and Professor Marcetti in the next slide will talk about the three activities that we specifically did in our class around a data privacy subject. And basically, if you see here, there's the learning. What happens is there's one activity that has to do with building trust and icebreaker. There's a second comparison where the students compare the cultures. And then the third is really where the students create knowledge. And so that's really where the learning comes in. And basically what happens is by the students examining an issue, and as I said, we did data privacy, they're able to develop cross-cultural awareness, and they do it through dialogue. And then in their last project, they build something together. So then they learn global connectiveness. And so that's really the goals of COIL, the two main goals of COIL. Okay, so Professor Marzetti. Are you there? Yes.
Me?
Hi.
Yeah, I have to arrange my different computers at the same time, but I'm here.
Oops, every time I touch it, it goes away. I'm not touching.
Give me a sec. Okay. Hello, everyone. It's my pleasure to be with you. We had this wonderful experience with Amy. I consider it a wonderful opportunity. I will stick to the main activities of our COIL. And as you can see, we decided to have three parts: an informational exchange, comparison, and a final collaborative project. The initial exchange was a simple icebreaker exercise in which the students presented themselves in teams. And that was an interesting first activity that gave us a lot of information, because I get a lot of useful information from doing this activity. The second activity was the comparison was a little bit more technical. It was about the forms of governments and the law. And that was basically the reason why we chose privacy laws, because there's still a lot of divergence in the US approach to privacy law, fragmented, state-based, no general comprehensive federal law, compared to the European one with the GDPR, this very powerful, comprehensive regulation that all member states must apply. And then some implementation at the national level. Finally, the collaborative final project was about the perceptions. And here I saw this reflection. I saw the students reflecting on their own cultures, how their own cultures affect the views of the law, of the legal system. I think most of them managed to internalize how important those perceptions are, to realize how they see the law, the legal system. So that about our activities. We did not want to make an overly long call. So the quantity of activities and the quality of the activities, I think it was well designed. And if you may, can you pass the slide, please, Amy? Thank you. And well, findings. I discovered many things. I found very useful our pre and post service to learn from the students. Certainly the students changed a little bit. The majority changed their views. If you read the surveys, I would say 95% of them changed their views, but not only about the law abroad, about how they understand their own laws and legal systems through their eyes. They realize the importance of culture, history, institutional lock-in. And at the same time, they improve their understanding of the other, the foreign, the foreign legal system. Both ways. It works both ways. And it also, according to most comments, there was some sort of culture shock at the beginning in how to arrange the work. There were different working ethoses, different working styles. And that was quite an interesting culture shock that was overcome by the third and last activity. But it was interesting, and students valued that because not all of them had been exposed to this kind of culture shock, to have to work with somebody you don't know in an asynchronous environment, using, at least in the case of my French students, a language that is not their first language. So that was an interesting perspective to highlight, as well as some differences in the perception of privacy. Oh, certainly, privacy stems from human rights as a European perspective, it's a manifestation, expression of human dignity, privacy, data protection, that seems less strongly felt, at least from that perspective, in the US. But maybe Amy would like to add more about that later. And the impact of the activity in general has been very positive in legal sense, in business sense, and also on a cultural perspective. So overall, all students were very satisfied. I am personally satisfied. I think me as well. We learned a lot. We can improve this, certainly. It was the first time we did this in my school at IESEG. This was the first VE coil, a concept that is not as well known in Europe as it is in the US, at least in continental Europe. But I wouldn't like to talk too much, Amy, because you asked me to be the timing. and not to Latin. So back to you.
But wait, this is the funniest thing, because even Professor Marcetti and we had cultural differences. And so I have been doing COIL for a while. I'm actually the COIL coordinator on my campus. And I have this CUNY COIL working group. We just got this wonderful grant from the Stevens Initiative. So I'm a little more steeped in COIL. And Professor Marcetti was not. So he had to follow my lead. But also he kept saying that I'm so New York, because we work, 24/7, right? So he would always tell me, the weekend, we don't work on the weekend. So that was a little bit hard for me. So I hope that I wasn't too much of a tyrant, but anyway, what can I say? So that was very interesting, because the professors have to collaborate first, and then you have to learn about each other's styles. And so it was a big learning curve for us too. And each time you do it, it's different. For example, I've done it with Brazil, I've done it with the Netherlands, and each time it's like a learning curve. For my students who are community college, so I think they're at a kind of skills, they're at a lower level. And my students also, of all the CUNYs, we have like around 18 different CUNYs, we're also maybe at the lower level of skills and knowledge. A lot of my students have GEDs, etc. So for my students, this was very, very, as they would say, out of their comfort zone. But I think they really all enjoyed it. They tried, I know that. They also don't know a lot. They don't know a lot about the class is cybersecurity, but this is a theme of cybersecurity, and maybe it's because in the United States, it's not stressed at all. And so they knew really very little about data privacy. They said it opened their eyes. They're so happy that they took this course, they said, because they knew nothing about it. And then I think that they, little by little, they got to understand that we don't have an overarching rule, that, it's state by state. It's been fascinating. And they also loved learning about the different perspectives. But what I was looking into, I think I still have time, right, is the impact on legal education. What COIL does is it's very interesting, because you are meeting people. See, I think I didn't mention this before, but the groups are joint. So there'd be two students from Dr. Marcetti's class and two from mine, for example. And so they would get to know a person. And I think when they got to know a person, it really humanized the culture for them, instead of just learning this kind of amorphous thing. And also I think that it's extremely important, because if a lawyer is going to have to work with a diverse population, even in his own country or her own country, and certainly if they're going to work in a global environment, they have to really understand and be aware of cross-cultural of things. And they have to, I think it also makes them think outside the box, because when you're taught as an attorney, I think you're taught to think like a lawyer, but now this adds kind of like an extra added layer. Now you're thinking as a culturally aware attorney. And I think that you're realizing maybe everything isn't from your point of view, right? That maybe there's other points of view. So I think that it really develops critical thinking skills. And also maybe they can start to look at the cultural assumptions of decisions, arguments, and even they can analyze laws differently. They can see that laws are reflective of social values. So all in all, I really feel like it prepares students to become global lawyers and even engage in business as it is now. Did you have anything you wanted to add, Professor Marzetti?
Oh, just to stress the last point you said, I think from the negotiation perspective, these multicultural skills are key for a lawyer, for a businessman, for everyone. And more and more today, we are negotiating with people from all over the world, and speaking English it's a great help, and we believe that we will communicate because we use English as a lingua franca, but there are still a lot of different assumptions and other cultural cues that are more difficult to spot. And I think this exercise made that clear, how important it is also to manage these multicultural skills, to acquire them, to improve them, because, well, the negotiation is in English, but the culture still have an impact on the way people make decisions and think. And that was also another very important, I believe that's a very important asset for law students and business students.
I think that's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Amy.
Thank you.
Thank you. That is a really interesting program. I would love to try that at the
You know
law.
what? Can I just say something,
Yeah.
Cynthia? My school was just awarded a Stevens Initiative, and I was looking through the Stevens Initiatives, and Seattle Law School is doing, they were just also awarded something, so their students are doing a course with Morocco.
Oh, cool.
It's on all levels. It's all, mostly college, I think, but it's K to 12 and law school.
Yeah, I could see how it would work really well in law school, and your topic, I agree, is perfect for this kind of thing because of the different cultures and how that's reflected in privacy law and privacy expectations. So really cool. Thank you very much for telling us about it. Our next speaker is Mando Rachovista, and I'm not sure I pronounced that right. So please correct me if I was wrong.
You did very well. Hi, from the Netherlands. Great to be here. Thank you. I've been teaching for 4 years now, international law, human rights law, and international technology law in the Netherlands. And before that, I was almost for 4 years in Qatar. I was teaching at Qatar University, human rights and international law. So I very much enjoyed Kabira's presentation earlier and how they're using storytelling, traditional storytelling in their class. It reminded me of the days that I used to experiment in Qatar with this teaching material. So I'll get to the point. I guess we're all here because we care about students, for them to be independent learners, acquiring depth understanding of what they're studying, critical reflection, co-creating spaces. Now the pandemic and the technological tools we have, they have created certain opportunities, which I definitely appreciate, but it has also brought many challenges. My experience, and I think overall for sure the experience in the Netherlands, is that our live sessions are much slower. Everything is takes place much more slowly, and that's an issue. Students, and I dare say lecturers as well, we lack motivation and focus, especially students, in terms of engagement. You can see that the levels of engagement are much lower these days. Something that we came to understand almost by accident is that students feel that there is a higher threshold for them to speak up online. So when you ask them a question, they feel that there is a higher threshold for them to speak up, and that's very important. And of course, for sure to realize that the learning process, it's a social activity taking place in person. And the things that the social cues we have and the social interactions we have as with students and students themselves, they are an integral part of the process. And this is something that is missing to a great extent from the online environment. Now, something else that's a little bit paradoxical in my view is the following. So in our effort, lecturers trying to compensate for less interaction with students, we keep giving them more recorded lectures, pre-recorded lectures, produce new knowledge clips. And usually these materials, they are of course informative and useful, but more or less in most instances, they sound a little bit like a podcast of a textbook. So although we say that now we have more opportunities for students to be independent learners, I'm a bit concerned that what we're doing doesn't necessarily make them more independent learners. So today, what I'm focusing is on the fact that I also felt very frustrated and disappointed from how things took place in class. I'm coming from a background that comes very naturally to me to tell stories, to use storytelling in class, to visualize. I'm a visual thinker myself to a great extent. And I love co-learning in class. So these things they were definitely missing from class. And through my frustration and disappointment, I decided that I will experiment even more in class to see what happened. As Cynthia said earlier, when life gives you lemonade, you make a lemonade. So I made a lemonade, and I will share my PowerPoint now with you. It has a very practical orientation. I will basically share some ideas with you. Sorry about that. It doesn't allow me to share. I'm not sure why.
If you can email them to me real quick, I can probably share them on my screen.
Sorry about that. I should have done it earlier. I wouldn't insist on the PowerPoint, but I do give some, the visual aid would be very helpful for people to see the examples. I will keep talking in the meantime.
Watching for them to appear in my email.
Okay, I just send it to you. Okay. So some of these tools, until we're able to have the PowerPoint, sorry about that. And it's very likely that you already use some of these tools, and it's not necessarily panacea. They don't work all the time, but overall they have worked with me. So first of all, something that I have underestimated so far in my teaching is giving students choices in terms of how they'll make an assignment to prepare for class or even for the assessment of the course. This kept them motivated and they appreciated the fact that they had a choice in terms of how they will make an essay. For example, whether they will write an essay of 500 words or whether they will do a conceptual map. So the first one is choices, even more choice for students. The second one is I used a lot, although I was a little bit skeptical at the beginning, but I did use a lot collaborative boards and word clouds in class. So for example, to give you an example, one exercise I gave to some master students was to compare 3 different bilateral investment treaties to spot the difference in the similarities. And I invited them to fill in a collaborative board. When we came in class, things were not slow anymore. So they have already done the work. They were able to see one another's work. And we were able to, in a very nice way, to organize and visualize knowledge. We'll be able to critically reflect upon what they have put down in the collaborative board. Another tool is word clouds, and word clouds can be used very spontaneously in class without preparation beforehand. So for example, I wanted students to reflect upon the differences between the terms sovereignty and digital sovereignty. So I gave them, yes, here we are, thank you. Yes, shall we?
Let me know which one to go to.
Yes, so you can move on to the next one, please. Okay, so this is an example of a collaborative board, and depending on the platform, students may have the opportunity to chat in the collaborative board. To my surprise, even if I didn't invite them, they were using the chat. Next one, please. And somebody also was making a joke here because they have posted notes, the collaborative board. So he was saying that his OCD kicked in. Next one, please. This is the example of the word clouds. So word clouds are very useful because first, they remove the barrier that the students feel, the high bar that in order for them to speak up in class online. So they just write words anonymously. And then you have something that all students together, collectively, they can reflect upon. And this was seriously useful in class, especially when you want to compare specific terms and concepts. Next one, please. Okay, this is empty. No, the empty one is fine. The previous one, please. The previous one, please, Cynthia. No, these are the next ones. Sorry about that. Yeah, that's the one. So we have a class that it's a drafting class, drafting and legal skills. They have to come up with their own research questions and write an essay. And most students, they have problems, challenges, being able to formulate their own research questions. That's very typical. So the way that I have dealt with it is that I give them a comic strip and I specifically invite them to use only this space to first present the problem and second, to present to us their research question. And they have only this space. They can use it whichever they want. They can draw if they want. They can use photos. Most of them they write text, but this is very useful to them, and it helps to focus and to properly formulate a research question. And it's actually quite fun. They find it fun. Next one, please, Cynthia. Okay, this is an example of a conceptual map, and now it gets a little bit more complex. I use this for them to read and understand a judgment. This is a judgment by a Dutch court assessing the human rights implications of AI processes. It was a rather complex judgment with complex legal issues. And I specifically gave them the choice. You can either write an essay explaining the main legal issues in this judgment or make this conceptual map. And to my surprise, I have to say, almost all students chose to go for a conceptual map. And after our discussion in class, during which we did compare the different ways that students did the conceptual maps and the topics that they identified, students did testify to the fact that this was a very useful tool for them to be able to organize knowledge and break down the judgment and the legal issues involved. Next one, please. This is same judgment, but different way that another student did it. Next one, please. Same thing here, different approach. Next one, please. Okay, have 2 minutes. Now, this is the even more interesting and a little bit more complex tool approach that I have used. I've experimented even before COVID with co-designing. So it's not just about co-learning anymore, but I specifically invite students to produce a specific output. It's goal-oriented. It's always group work. And I have definitely used it in 2 courses that they were interdisciplinary courses. And now I'm thinking how I'm going to use it in a proper, exclusively law-related course. Next one, please. So to give you an example, this was a human rights course with an interdisciplinary group of students. And as part of their assessment, I specifically asked them to identify a human rights problem and to design a solution for it. Design as broad as possibly. I gave them all options on the table, and I also gave them some ideas. They could have designed anything they wanted. So to give you an idea of how creative students were, also to my surprise, a group of students, they wanted to redraft the whole judgment, but that was a quite difficult task. So they came up with writing a dissenting opinion to that judgment. So they designed their own dissenting opinion. Next one, please. Another group of students, they designed a new human right. So they focused on AI, and they came up with the argument that AI has the right to meaningful human contact. And they backed it up in terms of law and philosophy. That was a great essay. And the idea to come up with a new human right regarding AI, it was fantastic. Next one, please. This is probably my favorite. I don't know whether you know the game, the card game, Do You Meme? It's quite funny. Next one, please. Two students, they took design very literally, which was great. And they designed the human rights expansion pack of the card game Do You Meme? And all of the questions, they were human rights related questions. And they were actually quite funny. We played that game ourselves because they designed all the cards and everything. So we properly played the card game at the end of the course. So it was truly brilliant. Next one, please. I won't elaborate on this because I'm getting very late. That was another example of inviting students to design, to find their own case study and create their own group video essay of 10 minutes on the course, on a specific course regarding dissidence and innovative thinking. And in this course, students really appreciated the freedom that I gave them in terms of choose your own case study of a dissenter and explain why they're a dissenter and how innovative thinking comes into play. The final output that they gave me, the videos, they are extraordinary, truly extraordinary. One last thing, next one, please. Okay, last idea in terms of co-designing. The keyword here is index. And index is probably the most boring thing on the whole planet. We rarely use it, the index at the end of the book, right? Relatively useless to most people, especially students that don't consult it, and it's extremely tedious and boring. But I invited students to create their own index of the course, of a course that I was teaching. And the result was quite interesting. So at the end of each lecture, I gave them a Google document, and at the end of each lecture, they had to write down 2 terms that they thought that they were the key terms of that course. And at the end of this course, we gathered all the terms, and it was a fantastic way for them to understand new concepts, to relate them with existing knowledge, and to also conceptualize the relationship between these terms. It was also fantastic that it gave them really, and they created this themselves, I didn't give them to them, a very structured knowledge of what happened in that course. So creating their own glossary of terms and creating their own indexes. So thank you, these were some ideas. Sorry for being a bit late. Cynthia, thank you very much, and I'm sorry for the inconvenience.
That was great. Those things were really creative and interesting. So thank you. I'm glad we managed. So this brings us to our next break, and so I want to have a little bit of discussion, but also save a little bit of time so we can take a couple minutes of break time. Does anybody have any questions to start us off with?
So this is not a very sophisticated.
Yes, Colleen.
This is not a very sophisticated question, but Mando, I love those different colored Post-its, and I'm just wondering, where do you find that? Is that a software package, or did you just create them? Because if it's easy to do, I would love to be able to do that.
If you just Google collaborate board,
yeah,
it will show up with many options that you can use, and many of them, well, some of them they're for free as well.
Right.
Yeah.
Thank you. It's a great idea. Really wonderful. Thank you for that.
I agree. It was really cool. Anybody else have any questions?
I have one for Mando. with these different ideas that you've had, that you've explained to us, how did you assess those? I mean, they seem remarkably creative. Did you make them a part of the grade for the students, or were these just independent learning projects that that they did, you know, for their own good, or were they pass fail? I'm just kind of curious.
No, this is a very, very important question, right? And it's one of the small problems to use them, to mainstream them in especially in in a formal and especially the law curriculum, because we tend to be quite formal in terms of assessment. So many of these tools, they were not for assessment. They were specifically to make our live interactions and lectures much more interactive and constructive and fun. So most of the examples that I gave you, they were not formally part of the assessment. So they were exercises that they would get anyway. And we gave them, I tried to give them a specific format that it was interactive and fun to them, and we're discussing them in class. In the co-design ideas that I gave you, the students making the collaborative group, the video essays, and the other examples about the card game that they designed, that was part of their assessment. But this was teaching 2 courses in 2 different streams in the university that they are highly experimental. One is the honors program that they really encourage innovation, and they give you space also in terms of assessment. And the other one was something very particular in the Netherlands. I didn't know that beforehand. They have the university colleges, which they don't study specific disciplines like the arts program from day one. So there as well, it's interdisciplinary, the whole teaching, and they also encourage innovation. So that was part of the assessment. So for example, to give you an idea, the card games idea, it was fantastic. It got 10 out of 10, but I did ask the students to also submit to me an essay explaining specifically the legal analysis of the card game. So what it meant and how they came up with it. And they actually came up with a very nice essay regarding human rights education. And I think 2 of them right now, they're using the card game for an NGO doing human rights education in a fun way. So there is room to incorporate in terms of assessment, but it can be a little bit challenging. Yeah.
The card game was awesome. I really liked that.
You're amazing.
That looked a lot of fun. Yeah.
Can I add one little thing? The card game came out of the 3 students who were the weakest in class. So that was a lot of food for thought for me.
Yes. And it really helped them learn, I'm sure. I have a question for Amy. How do you find your partners to do the class? And I mean, does your university already have partners, or how does it work?
No, that has been actually kind of a difficult thing. And we have this CUNY COIL working group. So we have about 5 of us who are like do a lot of work together, and then but we have it all across CUNY because we have a lot of schools. And so what we did was we put together a lot of places, a lot of resources for people. And so that's how we've been doing it. I mean, I can share that with people. Because it's kind of taken off like wildfire now because of the virtuality of education. At first, you know, some people were doing it, but now like everybody's doing it on all different levels. So there's a bunch of organizations, and I'm very happy to share that with people. And these organizations like unicollaboration.org, and they have these places where you can put up a post, and then you can find somebody. They have partner fairs now. So it's gotten a lot easier because there's more organizations that put you together, but I never had that.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really cool. I mean, since international travel is not possible, it's a way to get people together to still get the, you know, the benefit of that intercultural exchange.
And it's even better. Like we always look at it as something completely different. Like people say study abroad, this is instead, and we say no. This has its own, you know, benefits that are better, or, you know, extra benefits than study abroad. You know, a lot of employment competencies, you know, come out of this, and then it's kind of more democratic because you don't have like a host country and a guest in the host country, you know what I mean? Like everybody's together, and even when the students create their own knowledge, it's even you're on the same level as the professor. So it really democratizes everything.
Mhm.
But do you want me to send a slide or send something?
Yeah, that'd be great. If you
Okay,
want
great. Yes, my pleasure. Thank you so much for asking.
yeah, you're welcome. Anybody else have any other questions? Okay, let's take a 5-minute break and come back and hear our last 3 presentations. I'll see you at 12:30 Central Time.